it's me, Krusty Old Crow, and you are watching the Tactical Perspective Toy Review. This is my part of my show where I review toys. I do other things on other things, and I give them other crazy titles just to please myself. Maybe it makes it a little harder to find all my content, but it's all there. And it's all very relevant to toys, or ADHD, or just the lore and what you do with your toys and your hobbies and interests outside of that do bleed into that, including comic books, movies, music, whatever you guys want to talk about. But today, I am doing G.I. Joe Classified number 120, the Cobra Night Attack 4-wheel drive Stinger and Driver. All right, guys, stay tuned. And don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe if you like these kind of things, because I'm going to get right into the weeds of this. And guys, as an armored reconnaissance soldier, trained for 25 years, this vehicle fell right into my sights. And I said, hang on, we got some stuff to talk about. Let's go. So here we have the box that showed up yesterday at GameStop, and even the guy didn't even behind the counter. My good buddy Will here in at the Stranraer location here in Nepean, Ontario, which is really just the Greater Ottawa region. He didn't even have time to call me. I was already in the store, buddy, because I was picking up that bad. Oh man, I know something coming today, brother. Right? I just knew. I'd been looking online. Stinger reviews were coming, and they were coming out of Ontario. Facebook was showing some for sale. Guys were selling Stingers without the driver for $80 Canadian, and I said, that's a fair price. But I had already dumped a lot of money in this collection this last year, as you guys have seen and have yet to see. I really couldn't afford to do two of these, but I had one on pre-order. And sure enough, I was in the GameStop because I was curious. I thought it was time for my wreckage and my tiger paw to show up. Sorry, wreckage for you guys. Wreckage number 2 for me. If you guys know what that means, that's great. If you don't, one day if you're scrolling through my catalog, maybe you'll see my Tiger Force 2-pack I made on one of my conversions, the TCCCs. Nonetheless, I saw these big old Hasbro boxes. I looked at Will and I said, looks like I got my Tiger Paw to pick up. And he said, no G.I. Joe today. And I saw the code on the side of the box. G.I.J. Bloomfield or something to that, or Bloom County, or Blossom Boobies. I have no idea. They use code names on the side of the box, just like G.I. Joe should. But I looked at Will and I said, Will, I assure you, I am going nowhere today. You have G.I. Joe in those boxes. He said, okay, well, I'll have a look. And then he read the box. And he's like, And even a stranger that doesn't watch my show, but knows I have one, and that's why he does me so many major favors, hooking me up, making sure my pre-orders get in, suddenly realized, Crow knows what he's talking about. Opened her up. I did know what I was talking about. It was G.I. Joe, but I didn't know that much of what I was talking about. None of us really know it all at first, just based on the box. But I knew enough not to ask, what's in the box? What's in the box? I knew it was in the box. It was Joe. But it wasn't the Tiger Paw, it was this bad boy, which meant, oh shit, my wallet can't take that hit. My credit card, I just recently vacated that thing and I made room again. So, let's do the review on this bad boy, all right? So the box, as you can see, just like your original Vamp, had that window for you to have a look at that driver. And of course, we got that huge piece of box art, which this is really all I retain from the box now. Yes, I keep the box, but it's broken down to a flat piece of cardboard and tucked away somewhere for space-saving measures. But this I turn into art for my studio, which you guys notice I'm not in right now because we're really just still setting things up. And of course, my son and his mother will be living with me till March. They are going to move in just for a little while until the second house is ready, and then she will move over there and he will take half his things, and then I will turn my entire house into a G.I. Joe battlefield. If I want to stay single for the rest of my life, that will work. Nonetheless, I'm having fun with my box art. Speaking of that box art, still haven't verified that QR code that's supposed to be, access to Hasbro's website and just bring you somewhere to keep you into it, right? Wouldn't it be nice if it was about the vehicle at all, or maybe a file card or anything? Wouldn't it be nice if Hasbro didn't just pick and choose certain times to really listen to the fan and say, here you go, we heard you. they did something with this kit that is exactly that. Okay, and I'll get into that. They did a very good thing through listening, active listening to the group, but they created other issues by doing it. But they did it. All right. But with this QR code, that's been a scream thing about, like stop taking us to your latest sales page, where the very first thing I see when I'm looking for the Stinger is now going to be Copperhead Python Patrols on sale. Right? Like, just, I don't care. Okay, give us something relevant. But nonetheless, moving on, it's the primary combat functions that are consistent with every box of classified in some way. It's on there. It's telling you little qualifications your figure has or that character, seeing if you can tie it in there. Apparently there's a way to look these up on that website, and you can figure out what everything means, but there's nothing personal there. It's just strictly what they're qualified, or what the over encompassing title of stealth specialist or ninja or whatever these guys are. But there is something very disturbing about this. The driver of the Stinger, there's a couple of things that I'm going to tell you about today. But there you go, there's that back boxer, and you can see everything you come with when you get the Cobra Night Attack 4-wheel drive Stinger and driver box set number 120 by Hasbro's G.I. Joe Classified. You can see that you get extra blast effects on there. Well, the Crow's going to have an opinion about that, right? And you've got that black and gray Stinger right there, and it's a humble little Lamborghini based light armored vehicle. I wouldn't even call that armor, just a light armored vehicle, but I really don't call it armor when really the doors are the most protected thing. But we'll get into that in the review, because it's not this vehicle's fault. It's the design of what we fell in love with back in the 80s. That nostalgia got us by the short and curlies before you ever even had short and curlies. And it's got you now, even though they're gray and falling out, because they pulled them out, or you did. Anyways, enough about that kind of nonsense. Let's pay attention to the features they want us to see on the box. There's a dark image here. This is actually the steering column of the vehicle. They want you to pay special regard to that, so I will take you in there and I will show you some pictures of maybe what is worth noting about that. The engine panel, that's very interesting, isn't it? It's in the closed position, so under there is an engine. That's more of the driver instrument panel. Okay, so I've always said I feel like that's a little hit or miss of what they want you to draw your eyes to, but I feel like these are done using some rubric of, is there enough color, shape, or form to catch an eye to make someone look twice at the back of the package, right? You got to remember, this is not for you, Joe fans. It's not for you, classified collectors. It's not for you, toy critics and scrutinizers. It's for Grandma to go, oh, I don't think he'd like that. Wait, what's that? Oh, that's a pretty little flower. Oh, maybe he would like that. That's what that is, okay? So while I criticize Hasbro about these draw your eyes to these details, I do feel like it's wasted space, because really, I think Grandma's convincing is a price point they don't need. I think what they need is some nostalgic flavor, because that's their weapon. Always was. Why are they trying to modernize something that people are screaming for with every single wave? Take me back, right? We gave you retro. Fuck off. Take me back with this. That's pretty much it. The rest of the gobbledygook, like G.I. Joe says, look, who is it? Yo-Joe Jerk? Eagle shit. It's fucking fun. Okay, so next up we have the ammo crate. Trust me, there was nothing in there, all right? Number 120, very, reminiscent of what we get with every fig now. We're probably just going to see these on the larger scale vehicles that come with figs. But there you go, guys. I got one more to add to my wall. I'm even utilizing these as backdrops now because they're becoming rare, and I kind of like them. Did you? Let me know in the comments if you like these things. I did. I thought they were cool, but man, how much space do you want to dedicate to classify between the boxes, the side art, the figure, the extra figure you bought to hang on your wall, still in box, and then these? I mean, it's starting to collect, right? But it's a lot of talent into the packaging sometimes. I think it's easily overmissed because we're familiar with it at this point. But there you go. That's the box. That's this. That's that. Let's go into the file cart system. Oh, sorry. This was left over from the other video. If you didn't understand that whole Negan thing I did at the end, or even the purpose of why I did that video, that's all right. I'm not going to explain it. I don't mind if that video doesn't get likes, hits, comments, or whatnot. The people that get it, They know what to do with it. It's there, right? But if you didn't, don't worry about it. You won't see a follow-up on that. But I do remind you guys again, It's Negan is another product of Skybound Entertainment, really, because Robert Kirkland owns Skybound Entertainment. And if you're wondering why am I bringing that up, because the G.I. Joe comic book and all those sub-series, Duke, Scarlet, Destro, Cobra Commander, they were all by Skybound. Robert Kirkland has his knuckles into this, okay? And you know who else has the knuckles into the G.I. Joe comic book series? Classified. Trust me. Why do I say that? Because I have a really strong suspicion I know what the next towable feature is. And because it's made its appearance, as well as a couple characters I think are upcoming. Anyways, I won't go on a rant about that. Let's change the environment, take you outside, throw you in front of this thing. We'll show it off, we'll talk about it, and we'll go through that file card like I do with every other G.I. Joe classified review, because that is, to me, the bar none, black ball beats them all, stamp it, no erases, all God powers, because I said so. Main source of information you must always consult before critiquing a G.I. Joe toy. That's my personal feel about it. That's my rule. If it's there, you use it, okay? And then you broaden off that and decide whether that's relevant, modern, or whatnot, because that's what classified is. After that, like I said, I'll do all that. But instead of doing a head-to-toe on the vehicle, I'll just do it on the driver, and then I'm going to give you my final thoughts, or what I call ease springs in this case, where I just let it all out. Here's what I noticed, and this is why. And I will keep you pretty quick with those, because I got about 7 or more quick little observations. So they will be whipped at you with a photo to support, quick explanation, and we'll move on. That's today's format. Let's go. Known. Their primary military specialty, meaning the thing they were hired to do, Stinger Driver Infantry. Secondary military specialty, Artillery and Intelligence. Birthplace, various countries, grade 04 or equivalent. Cobra officers are frontline fighters who lead Cobra attack units into battle. Many are also believed to be operating as spy at defense plants, nuclear power facilities, etc. All are martial arts experts, masters of disguise, deceit, and demolitions. Graduated Cobra Stinger Driver School. Qualified expert AK-47 assault rifle. Maybe. PM-63 machine pistol, M16 Ingram M11 submachine gun. Cobra officers are dedicated to destroying G.I. Joe and the American way of life. Beware, they are extremely dangerous enemies. That's it. That's the file card. And yes, as it was when I was a kid, if you were to read this, you'd buy every part of it. But I'm a jaded 50-year-old combat veteran, and I'm going to poke holes in this one when I talk to you, the figure, and about why I don't believe an officer has any business in that driver's seat. But we'll save that for when we get to it, guys. There you go. There's your file card. We'll give the driver and the vehicle a grade after we're done having a look at it. So, of course, I've got to selfishly play with it a little bit outside in the yard and give you some shots of it with my hiss tank and a little scenery-beanery there of, scrap iron and his driver driving along in a beautiful Stinger. But you can see what I mean when I say that the vehicles complement each other very well. They always did. They always will. From one generation to the next, you're not going to change that color set just because you feel like it and it's a chance of modernizing. No, you'll just reprint it and give it to a new character group like the Dreadnoks, and that should be what we see. We should also see one of these for the G.I. Joe Tiger Force line at some point. But who knows, maybe people will start repainting these. And you know what? Why don't we just throw in a Vamp Mark II with a new clutch repaint as well? Because we have all the pieces here. And when I go into my little add-ons, I will talk to you about why I think we're going with a Kevin Malone approach to a Vamp Mark II with a new clutch for everybody that missed the Vamp Mark I. But so we've got the nice color sets, like I said, the red on the gray and the black. The vehicle itself, you can see the size scale it is to a HISS tank. I mean, it's a pretty big vehicle if you don't have a Vamp already, but somehow you have a HISS tank, I suppose. There you go. But you have figures. You can picture the scale. Now, the gull-wing doors, I posed them down. They actually flip all the way up. And, of course, you got that turbo on the top. You've got that shovel. A new front end feature as opposed to the big KC lights that are all over the original Vamp, the first Vamp for the Joes. This one has like a brush bar that is spiked at a push down brush or even act as a hay baler, or impale zombies. Who knows what you want to do with it, but it's there. If we were to follow the eyes up past that tinted windshield, you would see that they actually have their own light cluster very narrowly packed into that top of the modern roof, right? So it's not like he doesn't have the extra lights to compete. These guys are all-wheel, four-wheel, bush bashing vehicles. It's incredible how clean they are. It's extra paint and extra materials to do weathering. Some companies, I know they do it, especially on a smaller scale, like 1/72nd model scale and below. Hot Wheels to, anything like G.I. Joe O-ring level. Weathering on that stuff's easy to do. It's quick, it's dirty. It doesn't cost that much, I don't think, but the pound is worth the punch kind of deal. On a larger scale vehicle, I could see where it could be a bit of a risk to include it into the cost. I do know that Valaverse does it with their pardon me for not knowing the vehicle, Crusader or Avenger, I can't remember, but their patrol vehicle for their operatives, which is a way more realistic vehicle than the Lamborghini currently is, unfortunately. This Lamborghini-based design that is the Vamp does not actually match the modern battlefield environment the way the Vanguard, it is the Valaverse Vanguard. The Vanguard is actually far more associated with the conflicts of today than this would be. But this vehicle does remind me of a French recce vehicle, absolutely. So moving on, you got the gull wing doors up. You can see the gray interior. There wasn't a whole lot of paint given to seats or any of those features, but the dashboards, we'll have a look at those later. I've got the driver poised there. He's just doing a quick driver's inspection of his vehicle like a good driver should. It's part of your drills. You do a walk around your vehicle every time you start it. You go out, you do a walk around. Who knows who snuck up and stuck what under you? That's what I love about those action movies where Buddy goes up and puts a sticky bomb or something under the car. A good driver has been trained to always do a walk around their vehicle. And if he doesn't do it, the crew commander would, right? So we have a mix of roles here that toy companies will not reflect, but I have fun with, right? So you can see it's got that back step plate mounted on it there. That's important because later you'll see when I'm talking to you and I have the vehicle in my hands, I've taken it off and I'll show you what I did with it. And moreover, I'll explain to you how to do it and what some of the factors are that you have to consider. But that actual little piece was not really something I wanted on my Stinger, so I took it off. So let's play around with the camera some more. I'm just killing time with you guys. What else can we talk about? Those brake lights and yes, foot posts on that back piece. You see how the back deck of the Stinger is a little bit different than the back deck of the Vamp in its layout and design because of the type of weapon system and grading, but I don't think it's a matter of being different. It's a matter of different paint. Again, it's little sight tricks and where there's an absence of decals. I always laugh. Now I can't stop now that I've seen it. I can't unsee it. But G.I. Joe cares about their troops way more than Cobra. We always knew this, right? Including up to where they put cautions and warnings. If you have a good look at your G.I. Joe Vamp, you'll notice on the back it does say caution. And then right below where the tow hook is, and the Cobra tow hook is no different than your Vamp tow hook. It's got a little pivot and play in there to keep it, articulated and able to roll. But G.I. Joe has stand away written on the back, and on the front they've got once more caution, right? At no point does Cobra warn anybody to do anything but fuck off, right? So you've got no stand back, no warnings that those rockets could be triggered to go off at any point if somebody's standing back there having a conversation about, what are you going to do on R&R, Dave? Well, Scott, I'm thinking about going to Cobra and getting me one of those Serpentor roleplay girls. Right? There's no warning to tell people not to stand there. So, what else can we notice on this? I'm with you, Billy D. We're going to go ask me, the Crow, the king of voice editing and three-piece clipping. Here's that thing where I said, you want to see the Bismarck? This is the Bismarck. Metalhead and the Stinger probably have a combined, what is that, 2, 4, 6, plus 5, 11 missiles to fire there. But at least Metalhead comes with a couple of guns to defend himself anti-purse. Being a walking tank seems to be better than, or a walking missile platform, I should say. is a bit better than being a vehicular one, okay? Common fact about tanks and armored like that, they can't hold ground, guys. They need somebody with lighter armament and more maneuverability and flexibility to defend them. The Stinger has nothing but those missiles. The Stinger needs its driver and its firearms in order to defend it and hold ground. That's a tactical concern. It doesn't have a pintle mount weapon for a co-driver, perhaps, to defend the vehicle while this guy's driving. It's just got the missiles. I'm going to talk about the side armor for a second and just pause to just allow myself's moment to do that tactical thing I do and talk about a different way to look at the reason for these armor on these vehicles from a gunnery perspective. And I'm not doing this to take the fun out of toys and make them army-like. This is just a tool in your box for you creative types that maybe want to do, dioramas that may look more like what you see in real life in the news or on the cameras, and just other things to just inspire and just put another tool in your box. So just humor me while I just mention a few things that are known to armored gunners that aren't known to the common person when they're looking at things like this. So what we have here is we have a lot of side protection in one spot on a very light armored vehicle, and I'm going to put an emphasis light armored vehicle. LAV for short, which is what I basically spent my entire career operating in, was LAVs, light armored vehicles, but ours were 8 wheels. I worked on a LAV 25, which is called the Coyote, and I worked on a LAV 3, which is the predecessor, or the replacement infantry fighting vehicle. I call these because they have 25 millimeter turrets. This is a light armored vehicle with a mobile anti-air indirect fire system on it. It's got very low defense value, but it's got a high priority target value as it is defending an entire zone of air right now. This is important for this vehicle. As you can see, it's got air defense in the point, not of the weapon system, but meaning it has armor plating on the roof to protect a crew inside. It is protecting 2 very important people who operate a very important weapon system. But again, it is a light armored vehicle, so it needs to be able to add a little bit of weight and inches of whatever composite armor they're using to protect those 2 people. Which then carries over to an issue I have with the absence of protection to the front side of this vehicle. We have a very protective plate over the side of the vehicle, which is important when you're dealing with light weapons, 7.62 and below, down to 9mm, whatever. That's going to protect them from lucky shots as people strafe the vehicle and he drives by, of course. It'll protect them from getting wounded. However, the vehicle itself is, like I said, light armor, meaning it's not going to do well against 81mm direct fire weapon systems and anything above that. It's a light armor vehicle. A tank round will kill that thing. It'll either be a mobility kill or a complete devastation, vehicles burning. It'll also be subject to a lot of roadside bombs and things like that as a light armored vehicle. However, the most important part of this as a combat vehicle is where your front armor is and what you're working with, because that's where your most protection is going to be. Not because you should always face your enemy to orientate your weapons, although you should, because you're presenting the smallest target profile at that point with the least amount of predictability. In gunnery, in the military, it's not like they just put you behind there and treat it like a video game. Say, keep shooting till you learn. You have to learn a lot of theory, principle classes, a lot of dry stuff. You have to do a lot of studying and a lot of tests here in Canada to be a qualified gunner of any weapon system on a vehicle that's above the machine gun level. And while I have no actual idea what air defense gunnery incorporates for its programs on how to teach their gunners, I imagine there's quite a lot of overlap with a armored fighting vehicle gunner's course, where we learn, like I said, the principles and characteristics of ammunition and guns, and the guns we're learning, the weapon systems, I should say, because they're not just a gun, they're a system, and all the characteristics, everything around that. We have to spend hours of theory and practicum classes and then prove that we've retained the knowledge through an organic system of learning how everything operates, path of flow, what happens when, what happens if, so what. That's how we teach the gunners, all right? And then we get into the nuances of what they're going to be shooting, which is an armored vehicle recognition course, which is constantly upgraded. depending on the qualification and position that you're in. All right. A tank gunner does not need the same level of AFV threshold knowledge as a reconnaissance gunner, let's say. So regardless if you're an officer or an NCM, the AFV is critical. But for a tank, the AFV really is not as critical for reconnaissance, because when a tank runs into a target, they are not the forward element of the spear without a lot of planning process. By the time the tank enters the battlefield and goes and fucks shit up, they've already well defined that enemy through the recce element, unless it is a chance close contact. And then even then, that chance close contact is probably with the recce forward element probing them. And they can more than take most recce elements with a tank or a tank troop or perhaps a tank squadron if that recce element failed. The difference between the need for the AFV comes down to what the rules are. And with reconnaissance, you are not necessarily engaging the enemy. You are providing all the information about the ground, the terrain, the enemy, and the environment the main battle group is going to go and engage with. You're allowing them to plan the mission optimally to their best circumstances through your diligent efforts on information. So it's very important you know who's who on the battlefield in recce. Okay, I appreciate everybody bearing with me while I define that, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's not as easy as it sounds of just studying. You don't always get a clean look at these guys, and at night, you might not be able to tell who's Joe or who's Cobra, right? And I bring that up as a relevant point because our gunners have to learn how to do that differences. It doesn't matter if there's trees in the way or buildings in the way. We have to be able to look at every inch of that vehicle, and as soon as we see a nuance, we have to be able to relate that. I mean, colors are easy, but when you get into night and thermal and things like that, it comes down to placement of items, a change in shape between the two, and you have to be able to associate that with who owns it, because we have a lot of allied countries that use the same vehicles as countries we are not friends with. And I talk about Soviet stock vehicles. It's not as easy as you think to tell the difference between a BMP-1 and a BMP-2 or a BMP-3, and it's definitely not easy as a commander or a tactician to put in the other considerations involved, which would involve having immediate familiar knowledge with the differences between the weapon systems of the three. I am now looking at a BMP-2. My vehicle is 800 meters away. Am I in the optimal distance for me to engage this vehicle, or should I move back 400 meters because his sight system is only good to about 1,000 meters and mine's good to 1,500, so I'll have him outclassed. This is the information that forms for a better attack plan for a battle group to go in and engage an enemy, and you need your recce elements to be able to define that. So you need good, trained recce officers in order to do it. Simple as that. Anyways, I had to bring that in just to define the differences of the AFV recognition. Sorry. So again, just speaking as a toy design principle that is trying to reflect a military toy and modernizing it a little bit, I would have liked to see more front armor on this, because that is where the armor would be for a vehicle like this. Top armor, sure, but front armor as well, because this vehicle needs protection all around. So a glass windscreen, I would have liked to have seen some sort of caging or flip-up armor plating or something added to this. Even if it wasn't part of the original design, if you're going to claim modernization on other places and things like that, that's where I would go. But I know Hasbro doesn't need to, and I know fans aren't asking it. So that is the place where people like Gridiron Studios or 3D printers like my good friend Model Misfits 1138 on Instagram. You guys know him as Loki Wartooth, and of course he has his own channel, just Model Misfits, here on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to do that, make sure you check out all our buddies in the chat, because most of them have videos at this point, and I won't list them all here. But that's why these guys have business, because these pieces that Hasbro won't do should be done, and a lot of collectors agree they would like it to make their vehicles more unique and personal and custom. So there's your justification as to why, right? This is an anti-air asset. Any good commander, knowing it's on the battlefield, wants that taken away right away so he can bring in his air to the battle. So priority target. Behind that, there you go. There's your engine, the comparison. There's the vamp comparison, and the engine hasn't changed. So the bottom line is, well, you think sometimes, or some people might think moving, putting your side and moving really fast might make you harder to hit it. In modern battle system, it doesn't. We have things called lead lock, hunter killer sights, laser designated tracking, things like that. where it's not a matter of the gunner tracking you anymore, it's the computer, because he got a laze on you and he's locked. So it doesn't matter if you're weaving left and right. The fact that you're moving forward, it doesn't, that's the point. He can track you. It doesn't matter. But gunner could be half asleep and he's got you dead to right. So you're not safer side, even weaving in and out, because your change of left, right at that point is easily compensated by the computer. The reason this panel of armor is necessary, again, is for if he drives by small arm fire, and that's the only reason it's there. It's not going to protect him from anything significant on the battlefield. The front armor is smaller surface, so it has an advantage there, but moreover, it's changing its distance from you at an exponential rate, and it's easier for it to be moving away for you to track it than it is, but it does get into a more effective range faster. Where it gains the advantage is its ability to be unpredictably left or right and change where the gun has to track that way. And as it's closing distance, the ability to miss gets better. So the front armor becomes even more important for the survivability of it all. As does, in effect, the top armor as well, as it closes that distance. So guys, if you enjoyed all that, like, share, subscribe. I'll put little spins on that more often on the collection that I'm doing. And the things, as I've done in the past, it's kind of what the tactical perspective does. These are just toys. And this is just for fun. So don't ever think that this overrides my enjoyment of the toy to put this thing on there. This is just a part of it as a military combat veteran. Okay, so I will be adding more little quips like that, little army guy isms at the back when I do the E-Springs feature after I do the grading over here, because I don't hold Hasbro to account for all the little things that they don't know about the modern battlefield, but I do know that they have people they could ask. I know that they do seek consultation from experts in their field, just like any good toy company would. And I met some of those guys at Joe Fest, and they were telling me how the process works just organically through conversation as a favor to me. And I think that's brilliant that they do that. I wish they would do that more often, because some of these are really awesome when you see them and you know what they're about, but others don't. That's a different kind of dopamine release most toy collectors kind of understand, I think. So let's get that grading in, and then you guys can decide if you want to see the rest. And so now it's time to get into the driver of this thing. What we got here is just your standard Cobra officer figure and kit loadout, repainted into that very desired by most of the people I know, gray. Why so? Because it matches the ferret driver clearly. This is the driver pool colors, really. The gray and black pattern. And it's a very flattering and complimentary color to not just the figure and seeing this as a troop build, but also in general to the whole vehicle itself, because it is a gray and black vehicle. You'll see some shots I did of there. You'll see that I've compared it to beside other things like the his tank, and it matches well there. But there's some 788 comparison to there, and there was also Iron Grenadier, Scrap Iron, doing his Blitzkrieg. You could imagine a Scrap Iron were to man this thing, not Scrap Iron, pardon me. Well, Scrap Iron's in there now, by the way. He just came from, hanging out down South 77's imagination. Came down to visit mine. Anyways, not Scrap Iron I was talking about, of course. I was talking about Metalhead, the living rocket launcher, and Punchline. Can you imagine him crewing this thing? Now you're talking about the Bismarck, right? Or the Yamamoto. Just a huge gunship of rockets. It's ridiculous for the amount of armor it's got to protect itself. But I digress. That we'll get into in the final rounds. Okay, so this driver, if we'll remove Scrap Iron and the Stinger, if I were to show you, he has the very familiar loadouts, right? But he's got those hints of red which break up that just black and white makes gray kind of palette that we're dealing with, draws that eye in. And like I said, if you take an art course, they talk about how to draw eyes in and where to do placement, right? So we've got the head feature as a centered piece of red to draw your eye right to the head, and you can follow that down into the symmetry of color flow that they teach you about, right? I see your face. Oh, I've noticed that you are dark-skinned and you have eyes. Oh, that's beautiful. My eyes have wandered down to the next red. Oh, okay, Cobra logo on gray. Okay, my eyes are wandering to the next red. There's lots of little pouches and accessories. You are clearly ready for battle. Oh, my eyes are gone to the next red. Look at that shiny knife. Oh, there's nothing there. Turn around. More red. that's kind of just hitting you on that primal level of what you did when you were a kid picking them up. Right? It's that kind of stuff. And the stinger itself is no different, right? It's got the little red pieces. It's the same way. This is part of art. When you're trying to design things and get people to look at them the way you envision them, you have to consider things like color palette layout and how you're doing that. Weird, eh? So they don't come with an alternate head for a second ethnicity variants. So your troop builders are going to be regional until you can come up with some extra heads. You could swap it out, I suppose, with a 788 type head if you wanted to, or perhaps the Python Patrol Greys would work on this as well. So you do have choices, but it involves other kits, okay? So I'm not going to critique them on the head to toe because I've already done enough Cobra Soldier, Officer, Infantry, and Assaulter, basically reviews. You can go through my catalog and hear me talk about the function and service and all the kit, because his kit is the exact same. But I am going to draw your attention to one piece of kit, and I mentioned it in my court rulings on my hot mic the other night. That brought up Negan anyways. I feel like this was a mistake, not the mag still being able to be removed. That's fine. Here you have your Kalashnikov-based Warsaw style, very recognizable bad guy gun, right? Right? That's basically what they treat AKs as in all movies and lords. The low budget, easy access, bulk industry weapon of choice. So one of the big complaints I had about this particular mold that they were using in this print was the flashlight attachment that used to go up here, or laser designator, or whatever they want to say it was. It would fit nicely into this little recess that you see is now open, right on top, and if it was loose, heat the weapon, push it in, work it, and squeeze it tight, and it will tighten it up. If it was tight, do the opposite. Pull it a little bit after you heat it, and just work it out, and it'll loosen up. But I don't know why you'd want it loose. That thing fell off on me about a dozen times. I think I probably have them all on my AKs, but I might be missing one. I don't know. And if they're in a box, they're all not together by now, because they would fall out easily. So Hasbro must have listened and stopped doing it. The problem is, what they didn't do after is very noticeable. What they did do was absolutely nothing. They must have preyed on it because I cannot see no physical action, but they must have had intent. But preying on it did not put a piece of plastic to fill that gap. So keep preying on it, I suppose, but until then, this weapon to me is utterly useless because my eye can't help but notice that because of my values, my background, things like that. If it doesn't bother you, I'm very happy because that's toy acceptance, and I am all about accepting flaws as they are. But for me, I have my preferences, and they're based in those things that I listed, my values, my background, and my experience, right? I cannot look at this, so this gets tucked away, which brings another problem to the stinger that I'll talk about with crew weapon brackets. There is not a single bracket in this vehicle for this good driver officer to place his weapons. Now, he's not going to sit in the vehicle and drive it or gun it at all. I'll talk about that later. With this backpack piece on. So he needs a place to stow this. And I do prefer this weapon for him, the little stair-type weapon with the side-filled mag. You've seen it before, so I'm not going to focus on it, right? It's same as he's got a thing there. But he's not going to wear that. He's going to put that off to the side. Same as he's not going to keep that on his lap because it's, he'll collapse that stock. But it's not an optimal driver's weapon. It's not compact enough. It'll snag on things. It'll rattle around. And without a crew bracket, this thing's a frigging liability, okay? I have been in Afghanistan a couple of goes around, and one of the biggest things I had the biggest chuckle on was listening on the net while we were rolling under contact down the Arghandab River, waiting for the Taliban to hit us yet again, because, it's been 20 minutes at this point. We've made it for, 3 kilometers. It's time for them to try again that day. A trucker that I happened to know in one of the supply vehicles we were escorting, his rifle came off the bracket. Now, none of us heard it, that was his situation at the time, and usually you don't report that stuff, but he took a rock and he bounced, and it bonked him in the eye somehow. The whole barrel. A loaded C7 assault rifle carbine. Thank God it was unsafe, right? Came off the bracket, bounced, and hit him in the eye. He was not wearing his ballistic eyewear, I guess. I have no idea. I'll ask the guy if I ever talk to him again. Probably won't. He reported that on the net as a situation report. Just for everyone's essay, I have just been injured by my own rifle. I am halting convoy. Commander, acknowledge. Right? Like, hang on, you're not in contact with the enemy? No, that is correct. What happened? I poked my eye with my rifle. We're not stopping the convoy for that. What the fuck? Out! You know, like, so when I see no bracket in my vehicle, I think of that story. He needs a bracket. These vehicles need brackets for these. And I say that not just as a soldier, but as a toy enthusiast, because while I want this guy in here, what I don't want to do is I don't want to separate my characters from all the kit all that time. That means you have to have an organization and a stowage system, a bunch of places, maybe label stuff, Ziploc bags, all of that. What I would prefer is that because he's the driver of a large vehicle, a place for this stuff to stick in the vehicle, but nothing is provided with the vamp design for this. Specifically, the gun bracket I've talked about, but let's talk about backpacks and pouches and things like this, all right? On the second iteration of this vehicle, I cannot accept something like that. When on the first iteration of this vehicle, a company called Gridiron Studios, who make aftermarket parts for a number of line of products in the toy on the 6-inch scale, but classified, they're very well known for it. If you have an interest in learning more about that, I invite you to go check out A Punk with Toys and his channel. You can follow him and pretty much go through his catalog and see almost everything Gridiron ever put out for them, because he's a big fanatic of, well, not fanatic, he's a big fan of the quality of their work. His friend buys them all and allows them to review them. He's not the owner of them all, because they do, you know, quality costs money, and Gridiron has that reputable quality. But Gridiron solved the kit stowage issue for vehicles right away with the vamp down when they changed the roll cage for this bad boy. And on the vamp, as you know, Gridiron made you a lot of stuff. They made you alternate weapons, they made you alternate side kit, front kit, what have you, right? And they are continuing to do more because they realize the vamp's not going anywhere. It's just coming back many times, right? And so, with the roll cages they actually had places and little loops and hooks and everything that for your G.I. Joe characters' backpacks and accessories. So you could seat them in the vehicle and not separate them. That is very logical. If you look at any modern reconnaissance, light vehicle, especially them Brits, Aussies, you know, all the Commonwealth in the UK kind of stuff, like they like the big open top because the desert's hot and you need places to stow kit. It's a gypsy caravan, man. That stuff's hanging off the side. In my vehicles, which I was a lav crew for, it was always hanging off of our sides of our turrets and our bins, right? That's what's missing from these vehicles. That is a play factor and a dioramic factor. The Hasbro really could very cheaply achieve it. I'll get this part of the way. The reason I say very cheaply achieve it is because blast effects right now are a useless, no, I wouldn't say useless. They were great when they came out and nobody had them. But as we keep getting them, the people who have been collecting the line all along have accumulated a large supply of these. The people who have not been, yeah, great. It's another opportunity for them to get it. However, sometimes the blast effects don't make sense for the model that we're talking about and things like that. To me, blast effects should be an extra accessory pack that you could buy for your Joes. I think Joe needs to go back to the 80s and look at what those little bundles were that were in between figures and outside of the vehicles. Parents could spend maybe 1/4 the cost of what a vehicle is and maybe half the cost of what a figure is, and just get you one of those bundles because you were good during groceries and picked it up for you. And it was a weapons accessory pack or a cheap little wind-up zip line or anything like that. If Hasbro were to do that again, they would compete against the 3D print market, after print markets like Gridiron Studios, or even my friend John over at Top Fun Retro 3D Toys, Top Fun Retro Toys 3D.com. Pardon me, John, I am so sorry. I didn't plan that. He also makes aftermarket guns based on the actual real arsenal of the world today. So they would compete against that, but blast effects is now where I believe those belong. I believe you can take them or leave them, but I no longer want them in my vehicle sets because I'm worried that they're taking up a piece of the price that I am paying for that vehicle, and that they are replacing what I think are more functional and purposeful and needed accessories or work on that vehicle, where those plastic and money could have been allocated. And if they are being added as free features for these vehicles, other free features would be nice to switch things up. Hang on. left, but here's some footage I'll throw at you. Maybe you'll stick around. Maybe you'll still hit those like, share, subscribes. Who knows? Anyways, some other things I noticed about this was recovery. Okay, so recovery is going to be very important for a light armored vehicle, especially one that's off-roading as much as a vamp is, unweathered or not in the paint job. All right, vehicles get stuck in the mud and terrain all the time because sometimes your best firing position or your best position of observation is in the worst fucking ground because that's where nobody else would go. So you're going to get stuck from time to time. It happens. That's why we work in patrols. We have 2 vehicles per patrol usually at a minimum. So we can kind of scratch each other's back, recover each other if we need to, and keep the mission going. That's the bottom line. So when G.I. Joe Classified builds a vamp and they put in a functioning winch system and all of that, you'll see, and I'll throw in pictures, it's really something that you can kind of play with to your preference, all right? You'll notice in the photos that I'm putting up here that you'll see a left or right cabling system, right? That's a driver's preference. Maybe he wants to watch how he's doing the load from a certain angle because of terrain or whatever. You know, maybe he wants to have all the pressure coming off that lefty ring over the right. And so just with a little bit of knowing that, I just played around with my winch and I had a different mounting system than what I think people go to because it's easy to do. Just hook the hook on the bar, you know, or do something, hook it on a D-ring, right? What about a cross feed over for ready to take pressure? Pressure away from any direction that the vehicle you're recovering from needs it away from. So maybe you need to apply all the pressure to one side because guess what? Vehicles don't sink into the mud level. Sometimes one end will be much deeper than another and it needs more direct pressure applied to that than anywhere else. So it matters where you hook these things up. It also matters where you're going to get the best traction as the recovery vehicle. So these towing cable things are actually very much something drivers and crew commanders consider when they take these light armored vehicles out because it's about keeping the mission going, right? So you got to have the recovery ready. So having a spool length of cable already pulled out, maybe entwined anywhere, looped somewhere, hooked differently, is a different way of preparing for your partner or your fire team partner vehicle, your patrol partner. If he got stuck, you're quicker and ready to recover him that way. Where I can certainly say that the Stinger is an improvement upon the original Vamp is in the color of that tow cable. I would never, ever in real life ever see a white tow cable. And anything bright as far as color of D-rings would be chipped and weathered. So you conversion painters and diorama guys can have a lot of fun, you know, replacing tow cables or painting or dyeing and just touching up little parts like that, pulling out some spool, doing all that for the storytelling, because this is a light armored vehicle. Like I said, this guy's taking chances with the terrain. He's gonna get dirty, he's gonna get stuck. It's a feature I like. It's also why the Stinger 2 has a different kind of brush guard on there, right? It's the ways you tackle that terrain that makes the storytelling fun. Correct or not? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. The next spring point I'm going to bring up is the weapon system control issue I see. Okay, so I talk about the officer not being a driver, maybe being a gunner, but I have no gunnery controls here. This is the exact same interior mold used with the first Vamp, which had a manned gun system as they had it there, right? There was no gun controls here either, so why would it carry over to the Stinger? The paint jobs do have mild differences on those dash controls, but the one closest to the driver, that half of the vehicle's dash, is very much the same as with the Stinger. But the the right side does have some different readouts below the glove box and compartments there, but they didn't put any gunnery controls. So the Vamp has gunnery, this has nothing as I see it. And so where that becomes relevant is because I know 3D printers can make that separate control panel, the same one you saw with the HMS, and I think that's required for that gunnery control explanation in dioramic purposes versus the interior of the vehicle, that's all. Now, pardon me through the editing, it did occur to me that I did say I would save all E-springs to the end, but I did work some of them into the initial review, things about the tow cables and the gunnery racks and things like that, the qualification of the officer when I decided to do all that. Those were all incorporated to my E-springs points, but I'm going to talk about the one that Lenny addressed and a lot of people seem to have missed. There was something else the Stinger brought to the table that was for the fans and their asks. Alright guys, we're going to talk about that last one I want to talk about that Lenny talked about in so many myths, and that was, what about that step plate? It didn't make sense for a step plate to be added to a missile launching system with a back blast. Regardless of how you feel about the blast effects, if you put them on there and having a driver on there, you'll notice they occupy the same spot unless the gun's banked to the side. It just puts a rear party crew mounted on that back plate in danger the whole time. So it didn't make sense, and it received a lot of criticisms. Well, guys, if you had heard Lenny in that stream, and I wish I remember what stream it was, it's because it really wasn't for your stingers. It was for those of you who wished you had one for your vamp. And so, guys, it absolutely does mount on there. However, I'm going to hold this to the side so I can get the pertinent pictures up. And yes, that's a Fortnite figure on there. And no, I didn't use the foot posts because I didn't want to dick around with it. But you can see I've got it firmly mounted the same way you would mount it on the Stinger. But there was one obstacle I had to overcome. And that was the bracket for the jerry cans of fuel and the axe that we see there. So I'm going to remove this figure right now, and I'm going to show you that there is one small noticeable detrimental effect that the vamp occurs because of that. And that is only that your jerry cans don't really seat the same way. They're a little bit looser and offset. They're kind of rattling around in there. But you can see I got it firmly in there, right? And if I manage to get the photos up in the corner, great. If I didn't, then I'll just describe it anyways, because you're going to do it anyways, aren't you, girl? Yes, I am, while I knock figures around. Let's get her back up there, because she can. Because she can is why. Yeah, so there we go. One thing I would recommend everybody is either steam your part, like just put it in hot water for about 30 seconds. Not boiling, but hot water. Let this part soak a little bit, or use a hair dryer and just heat this area up a little bit. You can work this in here, but what you want to have a little bit more tender and softer for the transfer of this to the vamp instead of the Stinger is the little nubs that you see. Well, let's move her again. The little nubs that you see right here and right here behind these posts, you can see small little nubs there. And those have to be worked in around the shape of the bracket itself. And you see it when I do the comparative photos that with the Stinger, they don't have a bracket, right? So what they had was that inset mount like I had talked about and shown. So that's the difference there, okay? So I bring this up because, you know, there's a lot of sparked and unnecessary debate about toys that outdo each other with a better patent and design. They should be congratulated for always building a better mousetrap, not mocked or denied the credit that's due, I'm sure. But, you know, things like this, that is a sign that they do listen, they understand the complaints, and if it's affordable enough to do it and the process is worth doing, they'll consider it. But I do think that there's just a lot more out there that needs to be done besides the idea of throwing in blast effects with our vehicles, okay? I want to tell you about the Malone theory while I let you look at this. The Kevin Malone theory is my closing argument here. I feel like Hasbro is pulling a Kevin Malone in his theory on how to build a hamburger. I'm going to try and put a clip about this, but pay attention because I think Hasbro might be presenting us the Vamp Mark II in a choice. Either they put it out or you build it yourself. And that's going to bring us to our close today. No music, no gifts, just one little theory that Crow wants to throw a fun way. It's a Kevin Malone Big Mac idea. Here's how it goes.
Well, what is the idea? Every time you buy a Big Mac, you set one ingredient aside. Then, at the end of the week, you have a free Big Mac. And you love it even more because you made it with your own hands.
Yeah, so how does that apply? Well, I wouldn't even know begin how to tell you how that could apply. But I'm just saying, sometimes mold issues are very formulaic. These updates aren't on purpose, or are they? Maybe they are. Maybe they lead to something down the line. Maybe the vamp repeating issue is progressive for a reason. And that's how we got here. Anyways, guys, that was Kevin Malone's Big Mac idea at play. So, see ya.